So the Fair Chance Act is essentially city legislation that creates a process for how employers should consider a criminal record when hiring people for work. And, there's already state law that says that you can't discriminate against people based on their criminal record history. All this does is say you can't ask about it on the job postings, you can't ask about it on the applications, you can't ask about it during the interview. So you give people a fair chance to really prove their qualifications and merits first, and then you can consider the record, but you need to make sure that it actually has something to do with job duties. Basically, all we want to do is make sure that people that are coming home from incarceration have a fair chance to work and a fair chance to rebuild their lives.
This is part of a national movement. There are 19 states now. New York State recently created some rules at the executive level along these same lines. There are 19 states and over 100 cities and counties that have some form of a law that either just delays when the question about conviction history happens in the interview process, or even better, they delay when the question occurs in the interview process, and they create a process like New York City has done to help employers figure out what to make of that history. So it's not just the employer is grappling with, well, what do I do with this information?
Essentially what happens is it's just like a regular job interview, right? You go in, they ask you about your experience, why you're interested in the job, what you think are your qualifications to be hired for this position. You discuss all that and you're evaluated on that. And then let's say that, okay, this is the candidate that I want to hire. I can offer you the job and say, but, I'm going to need to run a background check, which they're totally able to do at that process. And so the purpose of this law is to really isolate all the other variables about why somebody could, legitimately be denied a job. Maybe they didn't do well in the interview. Maybe there were a bunch of candidates they were choosing from. But unless we can isolate the criminal record as the final step in the hiring process, we don't know, we aren't going to know. It's going to be very hard to know if discrimination is actually happening. So that's really what the benefit of the process. But say, okay, I'm offering you a job, I run your background check, and there's something that causes me some concern. At that point, it opens up a conversation. At that point, you show the person, you say, hey, I ran your background check. Here's the conviction that I'm really concerned about. These are the reasons, it's a shoplifting charge and I'm trying to hire you to be a cashier. I think that, I can't move forward with this. It doesn't, I want to deny the job based on the conviction history. Let's say it was maybe recently or something where, some sort of situation like that, that's totally a reasonable reason to deny somebody a job based on their conviction history. And so at that point you can deny the job and it's totally legal, it's totally fine. But say if the conviction is for a fight you got into when you were 18 and now you're 35 and you're trying to have a job, working as a cashier, there's a little, we need to take into consideration how long ago was the conviction? What was the conviction for? What have you done to prove that you are a restored person or that you've moved on from that moment in your life? And, at that point, it would be a little bit, I think at that point that's an example where, it's not really a good reason to deny somebody a job. And under this law, you would be in violation of just having blanket discrimination for reasons that aren't necessarily connected to the particular job duties and the person's actual conviction history.
What we have identified from our work with states and cities all over the country is a best practice, that it is the strongest policy when you wait until you know you want the person for the job and then you do the background check, and you're already invested in them and you're not automatically going to disqualify them because of a conviction. You'll go through that process that Elisa talked about and figure out whether the conviction is even relevant to the job they'll be doing and what have they done since then. So you'll have that conversation, and without having the inquiry into a criminal record come at this late stage, it's much easier for it to cloud an employer's judgment about how to consider that background.
Yeah.
a more long-term process that needs to happen is the mentality change that Elisa talked about, the fact that there are a lot of stereotypes and assumptions people have about people with records, and just because a law changed and employers aren't allowed to ask questions doesn't mean that it's automatically going to change the way people think about people with records. So it's really important for there to be hopefully a long-term shift in the way people think, and that's what we're hoping will happen as well.
So the great thing about the New York City Fair Chance Act is that it is the strongest fair chance hiring policy in the country. So really, New York is leading the way on progressive legislation to really knock down some of the barriers that impact people who are coming home from incarceration. So because of that, we're really eager to see how it all plays out in New York City. And so New York, this law will impact all employers with 4 or more employees, which is many employers in New York City. And of course, there are many national stores and businesses that have employ. They're very national that have posts here in New York City. So we do anticipate that there will be some national implications to say, like, hey, if you can obey the law in New York City, then you can obey it in other places. And in terms of the scope, there's nearly 1 in 3 Americans have a criminal record. So this is impacting a lot of people. And, it's not just, people with felonies, but people with misdemeanors. And obviously, in New York City with stop and frisk and just the massive amount of criminalization that has happened over the last couple of decades, many people have criminal records and are going to benefit from this law.